Welcome to lesson 33 in my series of videos getting started with OpenInsight 10. Today we're going to be looking at query by form. I'll be right back after these few words. Hello, you're listening to Martin, and today we are looking at QBF, query by form. Some people call it query by field, but I call it query by form because you're using multiple fields or controls in the form. Now, we're going to need to launch the MDI Main Window because this is the window where we've got our QBF functionality. But if we were to do a Control L and run our application, we've actually got QBF functionality right out of the box without doing anything at all. So for instance, off the top menu here, because we opted for the system menu to be added, if we go QBF and Initialize, that will clear all the prompts on the form for us. And if we then do, what should we do? We'll do, we want people of age 51. So we'll just put 51 into age. We do execute. That will then give us a browse list of 3 records. So my record, age 51. And if we go to next, we'll go to Frank, age 51. If we go to next again, if we go to Lucy, and we can jump around, so we could go to an absolute record within the browse list, so the first record, or we can run a table, and the table's not overly pretty, I will admit, but we can go to record number 1, so Frank Bennett, and if I just move that down there a little bit, we can click on that one and you can just jump around as you wish. So all of that functionality is available to you right out of the box with no work done whatsoever. However, when we created our MDI frame, we also included a number of buttons, a QBF Initialize and a few others. So what we're going to do is turn our attention to turning these buttons on. So the first one that we will look at will be the QBF Initialize. So in the events, on the click event, we're going to need to define a new event. Now, if you're not sure about the event that you need to configure for this one, we can actually cheat a little, because if we go back to the MDI Main Window and we click on the edit menu for this form, we've got in here the QBF option, so initialize, execute, next, etc. And if we look at initialize, you can see here we've got the quick event predefined for us, and we can simply replicate this in the quick event within the form for our button. So we're going to choose general, send an event at MDI active, and we're going to use QBF init for initialize. So we go back to the form, back to the button I should say, with general false. So the type is going to be send an event. The target is going to be at MDI active. And the message is going to be QBF init. And you can see here we've got all of the QBF options. Table, run, previous, next, load list, last, initialize, first, close. We've got the whole lot. So if we do OK to that, and then we can simply save and close, and I'll leave that open for the moment. So we then need to enable the button. We just come down to here and change enable to true. This button here is run, so we go to the events, the click event, and again if we're not sure we can go back to here, so execute, so we want QBF run. Okay, I've got a bit of a change with my terminology there, but that's not a problem. So the target again is going to be the MDI active, and the message that we're going to send is going to be QBF run. So we'll click OK and we'll save and close. And then we'll just, what we'll actually do here is I'm going to select all of these buttons right the way across, and we'll come down to the enabled, change them to true so that they're all now enabled. And then what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to very slowly go through all of the events for these buttons and selecting the appropriate event. So this is the first, so we turn the event on, send an event at the MDI active, and this one is going to be QBF first. So you get the idea. I'm going to leave you to do all of the other buttons, setting the quick events, and we'll catch up with each other when we're done. Okay, and then we'll just do a quick test on this. So we'll run the patient's form. We'll do QBF Initialize. We'll put the 51 back in there and we'll run it. And we get 1 of 3, and we can go forwards, we can go backwards, we can jump to the end, we can jump to the beginning, we can do an absolute, and we can view the table. Okay, so it looks like all of the buttons are good. Now the only thing with the buttons here is they're enabled all the time, and in the next part of the video we'll start to look at how we can make a little bit more sense of the buttons. So if we are at the end of the browse list, we shouldn't be able to continue to go next because we're at the end, although it does go round. It doesn't sort of really make sense, and certainly you wouldn't want the last because you're on the last record, and the same way when you click on the first, you're on the first record. So we might want to just play around with that a little bit. The other button that you might have noticed that I've added is a help button for the QBF. That is using the quick help form that we looked at in a previous video, and it simply tells you what the QBF is. So QBF is a functionality that was designed to provide users with simple but not comprehensive query capabilities, blah 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 blah. I've got a typo in there, so we'll correct that one. It's optimized for RList, which is OpenInsight's query mechanism, or SQL on the back end, although the syntax you're putting in that's created is something between it. It's not exactly the same. And what it does is it takes the user's input and then creates the query string behind the scenes for you. Now, one of the things that you should be aware of are the syntax operators. So there's a few things that QBF doesn't do. So you can't have the or, so you can't have age 51 or surname Phillips. It doesn't work that way. You can't use match mask searching, so part of a phone number or something like that, you'd use probably an index lookup for that. And the sorting is either in ascending or descending order. But what you can do is you can use these operators. So equals, so something is actually equal to CA or state CA. You got a greater than, So what I can do in here, if I just move this off to the side, and we will close down the QBF. Okay, I can't actually do anything with that, so let's just close down this window for the moment. So no, let's just save that change. So for instance, if we go QBF Initialize to clear the form, then we could do age greater than, oh, I don't know what ages I've got in here, 45. We test run that, and we now get a browse list of 10 where we've got all the people that are over that age. The other thing that we can do, you can have contains, which is the like 2 square brackets. So if we do contains ET and we run that, then again we now get people with a surname of with ET in there. So we get a browse list of 5. If we do a QBF Initialize and we do contains ET and age 51, what it's now going to do is it's going to look for everybody with a surname containing ET and their age of 51. And if we do a test run on that, we now just get 2. So we get Lucy Bennett, age 51, and we get Frank Bennett, age 51. So yeah, I've just created that simple quick help to enable my users to very quickly see which operators are valid. Right, okay, so next we'll start having a look at the buttons and enabling and disabling those as we go along. So let's just close down the test run window and we'll go back into design mode. And the first thing that we're going to want to do is to change the state of all of our buttons with the exception of the Initialize and the Help. So I'm just going to select all of these buttons and I'm going to set all of those to disabled. So change the enabled property to false. And for the Initialize button, we're going to add some code. So we'll go to events and we'll open up the script, and I'm just going to copy the code into here. Let's just tidy this up a little bit. Okay, so what this code is going to do is we are going to simply enable the run button and the close button, and we're going to disable the Initialize button, because basically once we've clicked the Initialize button, well, we don't want to do that again until we've closed it, but we do need to enable the run button so that our users can run the query or the search string, or they might want to back out of it to just do close. So we'll leave the return as 1, so it then goes on to run the initialization, the quick event, because if you remember within OpenInsight, it runs the scripts and then system code and then the quick event last. So if we compile that, it's compiled successfully, and we'll save and close. So the next button that we want to turn our attention to is going to be the run button. So again, if we go into the script and we turn the script on, and I'm just going to copy the code in again. The reason for the break in the video, I disappeared for a while, was because I had to learn how to do all of this. This is all a bit new to me. This isn't necessarily the most efficient and right way to go about this, but it's the way that is working for me, so it will do for this tutorial. So when we click the run button, what we want to now do is to disable the run button because we've already run it, but we now need to enable all of our navigation buttons. So that's simply what that piece of code does. So again, we'll compile, it's compiled OK, and we'll save and close. The next button that we need to work with is going to be the close button. So we'll go into the events again, as we've done before. We'll turn on the script. Again, I'm going to copy the code in, and when I'm copying it in, it's double spacing, so what I'm going to do is just take out the those bits and pieces. Let's change that to call. Now, using the call set property simply means that I now don't have to declare subroutines or declare functions. It's just a little bit of a shortcut in 10, which is rather nice. So again, in here, all we're going to do is we're going to re-enable the initialize button and disable all of the others, and obviously then we'll run the close to close down the QBF. So we'll compile that, all okay, and we will save and close. So if we were to test run this form now, and we run the patient's window, oops, and we're going to QBF Initialize and 51, you'll see that the QBF button is now disabled, but we've enabled the go and the stop, so I can back out of that if I want to. So if we go again, this time I'll put 51 in, and we'll run that, and then we get all of our buttons are enabled, but we're on the first record in the browse list, so it doesn't really make sense to have the first and the previous because we can't go anywhere. Okay, the first will go round and round and round and round, so you could leave that, but for me it doesn't really make too much sense. Certainly if we go first, then we don't want to be able to click the first again. So let's just come out of here and we'll go to the patient window. Now just before I do that, I'm going to copy a whole load of code, and okay, back on the patient. So for the prompt where our key is going to appear, so in the patient number, if we go into events and the changed event, we're going to add quite a fair bit of script, quite a fair bit of code. Now you know why I copied it in. So in here, what we're going to do this time, I'm not using call, set property, etc. So I've declared the subroutine for message, get property and set property. So the first thing we're going to do is to get the name of our MDI frame, because we're going to use that to send messages between the MDI child and the MDI frame. We then check the number of records that are in our QBF Browse List. So the Browse List is simply get property at window QBF list, and the ID, number of items, and then depending on the state of the Browse List, we're going to do certain things. So if there's just one item, we will set the following buttons. So if there's only one item, we don't need first, previous, absolute, next and last, so we'll just disable all of those buttons. If the browse list has got more records in it, then we'll set the absolute button, the stop button for all of them. But then if we're in position 1, we'll just set these buttons. So in other words, we will set the first and previous to disabled and the next and last to enabled, because obviously we don't know the states of those, so I'm just setting them anyway. And then if we are at the end of the list, we'll do the opposite with that code there. And then if we're somewhere in the middle, we'll run this piece of code. So we're running a very simple case statement here where it gets the position. If it's 1, it does this. If it's number of items, it does this. If it's 1, it does this. And then we end out and we should be good. So let's compile that, which it does compile fine. We'll save and close. Now we could just jump into the main form and run it, but I always do a save here so that the form is compiled as well, so it will use the code that we've just changed. If not, I find sometimes it doesn't use the code that we've just compiled, so I make sure that everything is all hunky-dory. So if we now test run the form, so we run the patient's form, QBF Initialize, so the buttons are good. 51, we'll test run that, and we're at the beginning of the browse list, so those two buttons are disabled, which is good. If we go to the end, we're good. If we go back, we're good. Forwards, we're good. Everything seems to be working as expected. I think we are good. Anyway, that's this lesson. So we've looked at QBF off of the menu. We've got all of the functionality on our menu. We've now added the functionality to our buttons using quick events, and we've also looked at using code to manage the states of those buttons. So hopefully you found this useful, and I look forward to seeing you on the next video. Thanks very much. Bye bye.